And on that Tuesday night at the Chase Center in San Francisco, 7 specific words were about to transform a celebrated victory into one of the most tense moments in recent NBA history. But to understand how we arrived at that instant, when Steph Curry simply stood up and left, leaving an entire room of journalists in absolute silence, we need to go back exactly 43 minutes earlier. The Warriors had just defeated the Lakers 118 to 112. It was their 4th consecutive victory, and Steph had done what he does best: 35 points, 8 assists, and that smile that makes playing basketball seem like the easiest thing in the world. Have you ever had those days when everything simply flows? When every movement seems choreographed by the universe? That was exactly how Steph felt that night. In the locker room, the atmosphere was pure celebration. Loud music, laughter echoing off the concrete walls, the characteristic smell of sweat mixed with deodorant, and that unmistakable energy of victory. It is impossible not to feel when a team is in perfect sync. Every word spoken carried that lightness of those who know they are on the right path. Steph was talking with his teammates, still in his soaking wet uniform, that sparkle in his eyes of someone who had just made another magical night happen. Ryan Johnson, the Warriors' press officer, entered the locker room with his tablet in hand, and that cordial professionalism as always. "Steph, press conference in 15 minutes. It's going to be quick. Everyone's already waiting there." "No problem, Ryan. Let me take a quick shower and I'll be right there." Steph responded without losing his smile. It was part of the routine. Play well, win, talk to the press, go home. Simple, predictable, safe. But is anything in life really predictable? 20 minutes later, Steph entered the press conference room. The environment was familiar. Rows of chairs, cameras pointed, that characteristic buzz of journalists talking among themselves before things officially begin. Bright lights that made the temperature rise a few degrees. The aroma of cold coffee and paper. Microphones arranged on the table in front of him. Everything absolutely normal. Steph sat down, adjusted his Warriors cap, and smiled at the cameras. "What's up, everyone? Good evening." The first questions were exactly what you would expect. "Steph, what made you so comfortable in the third quarter?" Technical questions, strategies, the game, controllable things, things that made sense. Sarah Mitchell, ESPN veteran, asked about the defense on LeBron. Another reporter questioned the team's chemistry. Steph answered with that natural tranquility, articulate, professional. You can notice that at that moment, everything was absolutely under control. 12 minutes into the press conference, questions and answers flowing naturally. Ryan was already mentally closing the session, ready for the final protocol. Steph was beginning to relax in that chair, his body still warm from the game's effort, but his mind already planning the way home. To Ayesha, to the children. To that precious moment of simply being a father and husband, not Steph Curry, the icon. And then Kenneth Jones raised his hand. Kenneth Jones, freelance reporter who had started covering the NBA only 6 months ago. Young, ambitious, and with that hunger to make a name for himself that sometimes clouds judgment about where the line is between journalism and sensationalism. He had a history of provocative questions, the type of person who believes that controversy is the same as relevance. "Yes, Kenneth." Steph nodded, not suspecting anything at all. What happens inside a person in the 2 seconds before they pronounce words that cannot be taken back? Kenneth took a deep breath, that pause you feel when someone is about to cross a line. And then he said, "Steph, your wife Ayesha stated this week on a podcast that she didn't know what she was doing when she married you at 22 years old. A lot of people are saying that this is the second time she's embarrassed you publicly. Remembering the red table talk from 2019. How do you deal with her constantly embarrassing you this way? Do you feel that Ayesha should be more careful with what she says about you two publicly? Silence. Some words change everything. Have you ever witnessed that type of silence that is not simply an absence of sound, but a presence of its own? When the air in the room seems to become denser, heavier, as if every molecule had stopped moving? That was exactly what was happening in that press conference room. Steph's smile did not disappear immediately. For a fraction of a second, it was still there, frozen on his face, like a mask that had not received the information that the world had just changed. But then, you could see, and everyone in the room could feel, the exact moment when those words really hit him. It was not anger that appeared first. It was something deeper, something that touched a place that goes far beyond pride or ego. It was that type of pain that comes when someone does what should not be done. Transform love into spectacle. Transform vulnerability into a weapon. Transform intimacy into a headline. Constantly embarrassing. Kenneth's words echoed in the room like a toxic mantra. Steph blinked. Once. Twice. You could almost hear the process happening inside his mind. The attempt to process, to find adequate words, to maintain that professionalism he had cultivated throughout his career, to not do exactly what he was about to do. Ryan, from the side of the room, felt the danger immediately. He started to move, ready to intervene, to end the press conference, to do what press officers do, protect. But he was 4 meters away, and some things happen too fast to be prevented. Steph placed both hands on the table in front of him. Slowly, deliberately. The sound of his palm against the wood echoed in the deadly silence. He pushed the chair back, that sound of wood scraping on the floor that makes everyone instinctively stop and look. And then he stood up. "We're done." He said only that. 2 syllables. Low voice, but loaded with something that made every person in that room understand that there was no possible negotiation. "Steph, wait," Ryan tried, already on his way. But Steph was already moving. He did not run, did not make a scene, simply walked toward the door with that silent determination that is, in a certain way, more impactful than any explosion could be. Each of his steps resonated in the room like a period being placed at the end of a sentence that no one had finished writing. "Steph, Steph, just one more question," someone shouted. Another journalist started to speak, but the words died in the air. Sarah Mitchell was standing, looking at Kenneth Jones with an expression that mixed disbelief and professional frustration. Cameras spun, trying to capture the moment. The frantic clicking of cell phones taking photos, the growing buzz of confused voices. And then the door closed. Steph Curry had left. The chaos that ensued was instantaneous. Journalists started talking at the same time, all wanting to process what they had just witnessed. Kenneth Jones was sitting, half in shock, half in ecstasy over the bomb he had just detonated. Ryan was standing in the middle of the room, holding his tablet, trying to decide whether to run after Steph or try to do damage control right there. "We're done, everyone. Press conference over," he finally said, his voice tense. But the real chaos was just beginning. At that exact moment, 4,800 kilometers away in Los Angeles, Ayesha Curry was at home putting the children to bed. She had no idea that her life was about to be turned upside down. Again. Her phone started vibrating. 1 notification. 2. 5. 20. In a matter of minutes, her screen was exploding with messages. Twitter, Instagram, texts, calls, and each notification brought the same energy. Something had happened. She opened Twitter, and there it was, already viral, already with millions of views. Steph Curry walks out of press conference after question about Ayesha. Her heart accelerated. That feeling you have when you know something big just happened, but you still don't know exactly what. Fingers trembling slightly. Not from fear, but from that adrenaline that comes when you are about to enter something that will require all your strength. She clicked on the video, and then she heard it. Heard Kenneth Jones pronounce those words that would transform her vulnerability into shame. That would take her honesty and twist it into a weapon. That would do exactly what she had always been afraid they would do. Transform love into weakness. She embarrasses you publicly. Some words change everything. And in that moment, while Steph was driving home with white knuckles on the steering wheel, while Ayesha was sitting in the darkness of the children's room processing what she had just heard, while the internet was already starting to choose sides and create narratives, while Kenneth Jones was already writing his article for the night, in that moment, none of them knew yet. They did not know that that question, that moment, that abrupt exit from the room would be just the beginning. They did not know that the storm that was forming would test not only their marriage, but the very idea of what it means to love someone under the relentless spotlights of fame. And they did not know that, in the end, that would be the moment that would force them to decide, continue playing the game by everyone's rules, or rewrite the rules completely. But that you will discover. Because some words change everything, and some reactions change even more. Steph was 15 minutes from home. His phone was ringing incessantly on the passenger seat, but he was not answering. Not yet. First, he needed to get home. Needed to see Ayesha. Needed to be in that place where Steph Curry, the athlete, could finally be just Steph, the man. But did that place still exist? Or had the line between public and private finally been completely erased? The city lights passed quickly by the window, each one blinking like an unanswered question. And as he drove, a single phrase echoed in his mind, repeating like a scratched record. She embarrasses you publicly. No, it was not that. It never was that. But how to explain something that should be obvious? How to defend something that should never need defense? He was about to discover that sometimes the only way to protect what you love is to stop apologizing for loving it the way you love. But first would come the storm. And oh, what a storm it would be. To understand why Steph Curry simply stood up and left that room, we need to go back not just to that morning, but to a Tuesday 3 days earlier, when Ayesha Curry was sitting in a cozy studio in Los Angeles recording an episode of the podcast Real Talk with Women, hosted by Jennifer Walsh. The environment was comfortable. Gray velvet sofas, soft lights that created that intimate atmosphere of conversation between friends, the aroma of chamomile tea in the air. It was exactly the type of space where people feel safe to be vulnerable. And vulnerability, as Ayesha was about to discover again, has a very high price when you are a public figure. Jennifer had that rare gift of making people open up. Warm, genuine, with 42 years of experience listening to women's stories. They had been talking for almost an hour about motherhood, about entrepreneurship, about the challenge of balancing personal identity with family roles. The conversation flowed naturally, like rivers finding their way. You got married at 22, right? Jennifer asked, leaning slightly forward with that authentic curiosity. With 4 children now, your own business empire, all this exposure. Have you ever looked back and thought about how young you were when it all started? Ayesha laughed, that laugh that carries decades of growth. Oh, God, 22 years old. I was so in love, so certain of everything. And I love Steph. Always loved him. That never changed. But sometimes I look at photos from that time and think, wow, that girl had no idea what was coming. You know? Of course, Jennifer agreed. Like, I didn't know what it really was to be the wife of an elite athlete. I didn't know what it would be like to raise children under constant spotlights. I didn't know that every word I said would be analyzed, distorted, transformed into a headline. If I had known then what I know now, she paused, choosing her words carefully. I would have prepared myself better emotionally, would have established boundaries earlier. But hey, we learn, right? I didn't know what I was doing at 22. Nobody knows. It's part of growing up. You can notice that there was no regret in those words. There was reflection, wisdom, the type of honesty that comes from someone who matured and can now look at their younger version with compassion. But when that 30-second clip was isolated, cut, and posted on social media 2 days later, well, context is the first victim of viralization. Ayesha Curry. I didn't know what I was doing when I married Steph. Steph Curry's wife admits, if I had known then what I know now. Ayesha Curry embarrasses Steph again, confesses regret about early marriage. Some words change everything, and when you remove the context, words can transform into weapons. But let's go back even further, because to really understand that moment at the press conference, you need to know a date that still haunts the Curry couple. May 2019. Red Table Talk. Jada Pinkett Smith. Ayesha, sitting at that iconic table, surrounded by powerful women, in an episode that should have been about female empowerment, and ended up becoming fuel for years of speculation and criticism. What did Ayesha really say that day? She talked about insecurity, about how, sometimes, she observed the massive amount of attention that Steph received from women around the world, and wondered if she herself was still desirable. About how strange it is when you are in a long-term monogamous relationship and suddenly realize that your husband receives external validation constantly while you are backstage, invisible. Sometimes, she had said, with painful vulnerability, I'm like, is it weird that I don't get that attention too? Like, hello, I'm still here, I'm still attractive, still a complete person beyond being his wife. It was a deeply human feeling. How many people have felt invisible next to a partner who shines intensely? It is not about not loving. It is about remembering that you also exist as an individual. But the internet does not hear nuances. The internet hears headlines. Ayesha Curry wants attention from other men. Steph Curry's wife complains about marriage. Ayesha Curry. I wish other men desired me. The attack was instantaneous and brutal. Comments saying she was ungrateful, that she should be grateful to have Steph, that she was asking to be cheated on, that she was toxic, that she was pathetic. Memes, jokes, endless analyses from relationship experts, dissecting every word as if they were surgeons looking for tumors. And Steph? Steph defended his wife publicly, said he admired her honesty, that real relationships involve difficult conversations, that he and Ayesha were a team, but the scar remained. And now, 5 years later, That wound had been reopened with a new layer of distortion. Tuesday morning, the day of the game against the Lakers. Steph was in the kitchen of their mansion in Atherton, preparing his post-workout smoothie. Soft California morning light entering through the huge windows, the distant sound of the children playing upstairs. That quiet moment before the chaos of the day begins. Have you ever had those moments of peace that you know are precious exactly because they are rare? Ayesha came down the stairs, still in her pajamas, her hair loose, no makeup. That was how Steph loved to see her most. Completely natural, completely herself. But he immediately noticed the tension in her shoulders, the way she held her phone too tightly. "Love," he said softly, "is everything okay?" She sighed, that type of sigh that carries the weight of 1,000 conversations you have already had in your head before having them out loud. "Did you see?" "See what?" She showed him the phone, the podcast clip, the headlines, the comments. It was like watching an accident happen in slow motion again. Steph put the smoothie glass on the counter. He knew this pattern, knew it too well. "Ayesha." "I didn't say that, Steph. I mean, I said the words, but not the way they are making it seem. I was talking about growth, about maturing, about how we all look at our younger selves and realize how much we didn't know. But look what they did." Her voice trembled slightly, not from weakness, but from that deep frustration that comes from being constantly misinterpreted. Steph approached, placed his hands on her shoulders. "I know, love. I know exactly what you meant. Anyone with two functioning neurons knows what you meant. But they don't want to know, do they? They want the headline, want the controversy, want to transform my life into entertainment." Tears began to form in her eyes, tears of anger and exhaustion. "I'm so tired, Steph. So tired of not being able to be human, of not being able to be vulnerable, of every word that comes out of my mouth being transformed into a weapon against me, against us. It is impossible not to feel the injustice of this situation. Imagine living your life knowing that every moment of honesty can and will be used against you, that every attempt to be authentic can transform into one more reason to be attacked." Steph pulled her into a hug, feeling the tension in her body, the silent trembling of someone holding emotions too big to fit inside one person. "Listen," he said softly. "They will say what they want to say. They always have. They always will. But we know the truth. I know the truth. And that's what matters." "But until when, Steph? Until when do we have to swallow it? Have to smile and accept that our life is content for everyone to consume and distort?" He had no answer, because that was the question that haunted every famous couple. Where is the line? When do you fight back? When do you simply stop caring? "Today I have a press conference after the game," Steph said slowly. "If anyone asks about this, I will defend you. I will clarify. I will—" "No." Ayesha pulled back slightly to look into his eyes. "No, love. That will only make it worse. It will become more headlines, more analyses, more people with opinions about our marriage. We've been through this. Remember, the red table talk? How much worse it got when we tried to explain. So we simply do nothing? We endure. We let it pass. In a week there will be another controversy and everyone will forget." But you could hear in her voice that she did not completely believe that herself. Steph kissed her forehead. "Okay, we endure, as always." But something changed in that moment, something that neither of them completely realized yet. Because when you spend years accumulating small wounds, eventually, one of them, even being small, will be the one that finally breaks the dam. During the game, Steph played with a different intensity. It was not anger exactly. It was more like purpose. Every basket he sank seemed to carry something beyond technique. It was as if he was proving something. To whom? To Ayesha? To the media? To himself? 35 points. Victory by 6. Warriors on a 4-game winning streak. Everything was going perfectly. Michelle Carter, Ayesha's best friend, sent a message during the fourth quarter. "Girl, Steph is flying today. He's playing for you, friend. You can feel it." Ayesha watched from home, the children already sleeping, alone in the dark room with only the TV glow illuminating her face. And she knew that Steph was carrying her pain on the court, knew that every basket was an "I love you" translated into basketball, knew that he was doing exactly what he said he would do. Enduring. But how much weight can a person carry before breaking? "Press conference in 5 minutes," the announcer announced as the game's final credits rolled. Ayesha thought about turning off the TV, thought about going to sleep, thought about not watching, because she knew, had that premonition you have when you know something is not going to end well. But she did not turn it off. She stayed there, watching Steph enter that press conference room with the smile she knew so well. The smile that said, everything is under control. But was it? Questions about the game. Questions about strategy. Questions about the winning streak. Everything normal. Everything safe. Steph answering with that natural ease. And then she saw Kenneth Jones raise his hand. Her stomach tightened. That feeling you have 1 second before thunder, when you have already seen the lightning and know the sound is coming, but has not arrived yet. And then she heard the words, heard her name being used as a weapon, heard her vulnerability being transformed into shame, heard years of pain being summarized in a poisonous question disguised as journalism. She embarrasses you publicly. Some words change everything, and as Ayesha watched her husband get up from that chair, watched his face transformed by something she rarely saw. Not anger, but something more dangerous, more profound, a limit being crossed. She felt simultaneously 2 things. Guilt. For him going through this because of her. And gratification. Because after years being told to endure, someone had finally said, enough. The TV showed chaos, journalists shouting, Ryan trying to control the situation, the door closing. Ayesha's phone exploded in her hands, and somewhere between Los Angeles and San Francisco, on a dark road under a starless sky, Steph Curry was driving home with white knuckles on the steering wheel and one thought hammering in his head. They can attack him, can question his game, can criticize his choices. But his wife? The woman who carried his children, who built her own empire, who stood by his side through every victory and defeat, who had the courage to be vulnerable in a world that punishes vulnerability? No, that line had been crossed for the last time. He did not know yet what he was going to do, did not know how he was going to respond. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. Enduring in silence was no longer an option. The storm was just beginning. And this time, they were not going to simply wait for it to pass. This time, they were going to enter the 3G eye of the hurricane and face everything head-on. But first, the storm needed to reach its maximum strength. And, oh, it was about to reach it. It was the time it took for the video of Steph Curry leaving the press conference to become the most talked about subject on Twitter worldwide. 8 minutes for millions of people to have a formed opinion about a marriage they never lived, about a pain they never felt, about a limit they never needed to defend. Have you ever observed how frighteningly fast the world moves when there is blood in the water? Steph Curry walkout was at the top of trending topics before Steph even got home. But it was not just a trending topic. It was a digital avalanche. It was millions of simultaneous voices, each absolutely convinced they had the correct interpretation of a moment that lasted less than 30 seconds. Sports analyst 4-7. Steph Curry completely disrespected the press today. You're a public figure, man. Handle the tough questions. Professionalism. Women in sports. Did you see the question? It was absolutely disrespectful to Ayesha. Steph did the right thing. When are we going to stop treating athletes' wives like public property? Respect Ayesha. A basketball takes. Ayesha Curry caused this. If you're going to talk about your marriage publicly, you can't be shocked when people ask about it. She embarrassed him again. Facts. Feminist voices. The misogyny of blaming Ayesha for being vulnerable is exactly the problem. Women cannot be honest without being punished. Steph defended his wife. That's what real men do. Stand with Ayesha. And so on, and so on, and so on. Two narratives, two armies, zero space for nuance. Either Steph was a hero defending his wife, or he was a spoiled brat who cannot handle criticism. Either Ayesha was a victim of systemic misogyny, or she was a drama queen seeking attention at her husband's expense. There was no middle ground. There was no space for the possibility that maybe, just maybe. The situation was more complex than 280 characters could capture. Some words change everything, and some reactions change even more. In the car, Steph finally picked up his phone. 63 unread messages, 22 missed calls, emails, notifications, alerts. It was like opening a digital Pandora's box where each message brought a new layer of chaos. Ryan Johnson. We need to talk. Urgent. David Martinez, his agent. Steph, call me as soon as you can. The NBA wants a IE statement. Draymond Green, his teammate. Man, I saw it. You did right. Fuck case that reporter. But get ready, this is going to get ugly. His mother. Steph, call me when you get home. Everyone is worried. And among all these professional messages, from family, from friends, there was one that made his heart tighten. Ayesha, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Call me when you can. I love you. He read that message 3 times. Every word was a knife. She was apologizing. For what? For being human? For being honest? For existing in a world that transforms vulnerability into crime? No, not at all. Steph typed quickly. Don't apologize. For anything. Getting home. I love you more than anything. But as he drove through the dark streets of San Francisco, passing by lit houses where people were probably having their own opinions about his life, about his marriage, about his reaction, he felt something growing inside him. It was not anger. Anger was too simple, too small for what he was feeling. It was clarity. Clarity that it had reached the point where silence was not peace. It was complicity. Clarity that protecting his family did not mean hiding it. It meant defending its right to exist with all its human complexity. Clarity that some battles you do not choose to fight. They choose you. When Steph opened the front door, Ayesha was waiting in the hall. They looked at each other for a long moment. Have you ever had those moments where words seem completely inadequate to express what is happening? where everything you need to say is in the eyes, in the posture, in the way the space between two people seems to vibrate with unspoken emotions. He walked to her, held her face with both hands, and simply kissed her, not with passion, but with a fierce tenderness that said, "I choose you. I always chose you. I will always choose you." "Are the children sleeping?" he asked softly. She nodded, "Yes." "They didn't see anything. I turned everything off. Cell phones, TV, everything. They won't see this mess." They moved to the living room, that large space with windows overlooking the dark garden. Steph sat on the sofa, Ayesha curled up beside him, head on his shoulder, and for the first time that infinite night, there was silence. Not the deadly silence of the press conference, but the intimate silence of two people who know each other too deeply to need to fill every second with words. "Is your phone exploding too?" Steph finally asked. "I turned it off. I can't stand to see anymore. Can't stand to read anymore." Her voice was tired in a way that went beyond physical. It was the tired of someone who fought the same battle 1,000 times and is wondering if it is worth getting up again. What are they saying? The same things as always. Half saying I'm a victim, half saying I'm dramatic. Nobody really listening to me. Nobody really wanting to understand. She sighed. "And about you. Half saying you're a hero. Half saying you were spoiled. As if everything had to be black or white. As if it couldn't simply be complicated. It is impossible not to feel the exhaustion in that. The tiredness of living in a world that demands everything be summarizable in a headline, categorizable in right or wrong, transformable into consumable content. "I didn't want you to go through this because of me," Ayesha said, and Steph felt her tremble slightly. "Hey, look at me." He turned her gently so they were face to face. "This is not because of you. It's because of a world that cannot stand to see women being real. It's because of a media that profits from distortion. It's because of a system that transforms our lives into entertainment and then acts surprised when we get tired of it." "But I gave them ammunition, Steph. I went on the podcast. I spoke. You were human. You were authentic. You were brave enough to be vulnerable in a world that punishes vulnerability. And I refuse to live in a world where my wife has to apologize for that." Tears started rolling down Ayesha's face. Not tears of sadness, but that type of crying that comes when someone finally says out loud what you needed to hear, but did not dare hope for. "I'm so tired, love. So tired of having to choose between being real and being safe. So tired of knowing that every word I say will be dissected. So tired of seeing you having to defend me." "Then stop seeing me defending you as a burden. Start seeing it as a privilege." Steph wiped the tears from her face with his thumbs. "You are my best friend, my partner, the mother of my children, the strongest woman I know. Defending you is not work. It's an honor." You can notice that was what it had always been, wasn't it? It was not about a podcast. It was not about a misinterpreted comment. It was about a couple deciding where their line was, where their limit was, how much of their humanity they were willing to sacrifice on the altar of public image. Steph's phone vibrated on the coffee table. They looked at it, as if it were a snake about to strike. Ryan Johnson calling again. "Are you going to answer?" Ayesha asked. Steph picked up the phone, but did not answer immediately. "He's going to want me to make a statement. Something diplomatic. Something that controls the narrative and minimizes the damage. He's going to want me to be strategic." And you want to? I want to tell the truth. He looked at her with an intensity that made the air in the room seem denser. I want to stop playing their game. Want to stop translating our humanity into press releases. He paused, processing what he was about to say. I want us to face this head on. Together. No filter. No strategy. Just us. Being honest about what it really is to live this. They will destroy you, Ayesha whispered. We'll destroy both of us. Or, Steph said slowly, maybe we destroy their narrative first. The phone stopped ringing. Silence returned. But it was a different silence now. It was the silence before a decision, before a leap, before a choice you cannot undo. What are you thinking? Ayesha asked, able to see the neurons firing behind his eyes. I'm thinking that every time we tried to play by their rules, we lost. Red table talk? We tried to explain afterward, and it only got worse. This podcast? You were vulnerable, and they transformed it into a weapon. How many times are we going to play the same song expecting a different result? So, what's the alternative? We changed the song completely. Steph stood up, beginning to walk around the room, that nervous energy of when an idea is taking shape. We don't make a statement through press officers. We don't give a controlled interview. We sit down, both of us, turn on a camera, and talk. No script. No rehearsal. Just us telling our version. The complete version. The context they always cut out. A live stream? Ayesha asked, standing up too, processing. A conversation. Real. Raw. Honest. He was excited now. You could hear it in his voice. We show exactly what happened. What you really said on the podcast. The complete context. The question they asked me. Why I left. Everything. And we do it together, showing that we are a team, that they won't divide us. The NBA is going to freak out. Your press team is going to freak out. Everyone is going to think it's a bad idea. Probably is. Steph gave a crooked smile. But continuing to do what we've always done is definitely not working. So what do we have to lose? Ayesha stood, still, processing. And then something changed in her face. That look Steph knew well. It was the look she had when she decided she was not going to apologize anymore. When she decided she had done nothing wrong. When she decided to fight. When? She asked simply. Tomorrow. Before they completely control the narrative. Before this becomes another controversy that passed. We take control now. Some words change everything. And some decisions change everything even more. They did not know yet. But that decision, made at 11:42 at night in a dark living room by two people tired of being misinterpreted, would change not only their lives, but the entire conversation about what public figures owe or do not owe to the audience that consumes them. But first, they needed to actually do it. And the more the night progressed, the more messages arrived, the more the media machine kept spinning its distorted versions of the truth, the more frightening and more liberating that decision became. Steph answered the phone when Ryan called for the 10th time. Ryan, listen. Tomorrow morning, 11 o'clock, Ayesha and I are going to do a live on my Instagram. No questions, no press team, no filter. Just the two of us speaking the truth. You can be there if you want, but we're not changing our minds. Silence on the other end. And then, Steph, are you sure that? Absolutely. The NBA is going to. The NBA can deal with it. I've never broken any rules. Never caused a scandal. Never been anything but professional. But my wife is not part of my contract. My marriage is not their property. And I'm going to make that very clear. Another silence. Okay, I'll be there. Someone needs to make sure you two don't get into legal trouble. Thanks, Ryan. When he hung up, Ayesha was leaning against the door frame, watching. So that's it. We're really doing this. We're really doing this. And if everything goes wrong? Steph walked to her, intertwined his fingers with hers. Then at least we'll fall standing on our feet, telling our truth, together. And that's already more dignity than any diplomatic press release could give us. She nodded slowly, and then, surprisingly, smiled. A small smile, but genuine. You know what? I'm scared. But for the first time in years, I'm also excited. Like, we're finally going to stop apologizing for existing. Exactly. They went upstairs hand in hand, checked on the children sleeping peacefully with no idea of the storm happening around them, and prepared to try to rest before what would be, without doubt, one of the most important days of their lives. But as Ayesha lay in bed, looking at the dark ceiling, one last question echoed in her mind. Was the world ready to listen? Or had they just decided to swim straight into a shark waiting to be devoured? Tomorrow, they would find out. But for today, for the first time in a long time, they had something they had lost amid all the years of distortion and defense, clarity of purpose, and each other. Some words change everything, but some actions can change everything back. Steph and Ayesha Curry were sitting in the home office, side by side on a simple sofa, with a single cell phone camera positioned on a tripod in front of them. No professional makeup, no studio lighting, no production team. Just a man and a woman about to do something that goes against every self-preservation instinct that public figures develop over the years. They were going to be completely honest. Ryan Johnson was leaning against the wall in the back, tablet in hand, tense expression. He had spent the last 12 hours trying to convince them to reconsider. He failed. Now all he could do was minimize damage in real time. If that was even possible. "Are you sure?" he asked for the last time. Steph and Ayesha looked at each other. That look that couples who have been through storms together know well. That look that says, I protect you, you protect me, and together we can handle anything. Absolutely, they said almost in unison. Steph picked up the cell phone, opened Instagram, millions of followers waiting. Have you ever felt that chill in your stomach before doing something irrevocable? When you know that as soon as you press that button, there is no going back? That was exactly what he was feeling. But along with the fear, there was something stronger. Liberation. He pressed Start Live. The first 1,000 viewers entered in seconds. 5,000. 10,000. 20,000. 50,000. In less than 1 minute, 100,000 people were watching, and the number kept climbing at breakneck speed. Hey, everyone, Steph began, voice surprisingly calm. Thank you for being here. Ayesha and I wanted to talk to you about what happened yesterday. No filter, no press team writing a script, just the two of us, being honest. Ayesha was sitting beside him, hands clasped in her lap, that posture that shows vulnerability and strength at the same time. We normally don't do this, she said. Normally we let it pass, let the news cycle continue. But this time, we decided we needed to tell our truth. Not the edited version, the complete truth. 200,000 viewers. 300,000. Comments starting to explode. I'm here! Speak, Steph. Ayesha, you don't owe anyone an explanation. You deserve privacy. Finally, the truth. But also, here comes the drama. Just seeking attention. Zero. Professionalism. Steph took a deep breath. Yesterday, after a game where we had won, where I was happy, where everything was going well, a reporter asked a question that crossed a line, and I left. A lot of people are asking why. A lot of people have theories. So let me explain exactly why. He looked directly at the camera. The question was not about basketball. It was not about team strategy. It was not about anything related to my work. The question was designed specifically to humiliate my wife, to take her vulnerability and transform it into shame, to suggest that she embarrasses me. And I will no longer pretend that this type of thing is legitimate journalism. You can notice the shift in energy in the room. It was not anger. It was absolute clarity. Ayesha continued, voice firm but loaded with emotion. A few days ago, I participated in a podcast where I talked about growth, about looking back and realizing how much we didn't know when we were young. I said I got married at 22 years old, and that, obviously, I didn't completely know what I was doing because nobody knows at 22. She paused, letting that sink in. I didn't say I regret it, didn't say I'm unhappy, didn't say my marriage is a farce. I said I was young and that I grew, that we grew, together. And somehow, that was distorted into Ayesha embarrasses Steph again. 400,000 viewers. 500,000. The live was becoming one of the most watched moments of the year. And the truth, Steph resumed, is that this is not new. This has been happening for years. In 2019, Ayesha went on Red Table Talk and was honest about insecurities, about how strange it is for your husband to receive massive attention from women all the time while you're backstage being just the wife. She was being vulnerable, was being real, and was crucified for it. They said I wanted to be cheated on, Ayesha added, tears beginning to form, but voice remaining strong. Said I was toxic, that I didn't appreciate my husband, that I was destroying our marriage publicly, because I had the courage to admit that sometimes I feel insecure, that sometimes it's difficult, that real relationships involve difficult conversations. Steph placed his hand on her knee. And I'm going to say something that needs to be said. My wife has nothing to apologize for. Vulnerability is not weakness. Honesty is not betrayal. And women, especially women married to famous men, should not have to choose between being authentic and being safe. It is impossible not to feel the weight of these words. How many women were watching that and feeling their own experiences being validated for the first time? So, when that reporter yesterday took years of distortion, years of pain, and summarized it in a poisonous question, suggesting that my wife constantly embarrasses me, Steph shook his head. I was not going to sit there and validate that with a diplomatic answer. I was not going to play the game one more time. So I left. And I would do it again. 600,000 viewers. 700,000. Worldwide trending topic in 12 countries simultaneously. Ayesha wiped the tears that had begun to fall. We're not asking not to be questioned. We understand that public figures have responsibilities. But there's a difference between journalism and cruelty. There's a difference between legitimate questions and attempts to create drama. And we're tired of pretending there isn't. And look, Steph continued, we know that by doing this, we're going to be criticized. They'll say we're dramatic, that we're seeking attention, that we should have stayed quiet. But you know what? We stayed quiet for years, and it only got worse. So today, we choose to speak. Choose our truth instead of the narrative they build about us. 800,000. 900,000. Comments were an avalanche. Crying here. This is so necessary. Maximum respect. Finally, someone speaking real. Ayesha, you're amazing. Steph, you're an example of a husband. But also criticisms. There were always criticisms. But for the first time, they seemed smaller, less important. Because truth, when told with clarity and conviction, has a power that opinions simply do not have. We want to make one thing clear, Ayesha said, looking directly at the camera. We love each other. Our family is strong. Our marriage is not perfect because no marriage is, but it's real, it's honest, and it's not public entertainment. And from now on, Steph added, we're going to establish clearer boundaries. Our family is not content. Our private conversations are not headlines. And if that means having less access to behind the scenes, so be it. Because protection of our peace is worth more than public approval. 1 million viewers. The number stopped climbing not because people stopped entering, but because the platform literally could not process more. We wanted to use this moment, Ayesha continued, to speak to all the women who have been punished for being honest, for all who have had their words distorted, for all who have been called dramatic for having emotions. You're not alone, and you don't owe anyone apologies for being human. And for men, Steph added, defending your partners is not weakness. Believing them when they share vulnerability is not being manipulated. It's being a real partner. It's choosing love instead of ego. Have you ever witnessed that moment where something shifts? Where you can feel a collective shift happening? That was it. Millions of people watching two human beings simply refusing to be small, refusing to apologize, refusing to play a game rigged against them. We don't know what will happen after this, Steph said, coming to the end. We don't know if this will help or make things worse, but we know we told our truth, and that has value independent of the reaction. Thank you for listening, Ayesha concluded. Thank you for being here. And for anyone going through something similar, being misunderstood, having your words used against you, fighting to be truly heard, keep fighting. Your truth matters. Steph looked at her, then at the camera. Some words change everything, but some truths liberate everything. And then he ended the live. What happened in the next 30 minutes was extraordinary. The video was shared 3 million times in half an hour. Articles being published in real time. Other athletes starting to speak. Wives of public figures sharing their own experiences. A movement being born from a moment of courage. WNBA player Sarah. This is what we needed to hear. Thank you, Steph and Ayesha, for saying what so many of us feel. Real talk. Furtive actress Jennifer. Crying watching this. How many times have my words been distorted? How many times was I dramatic for having emotions? Thank you for speaking. Old Coach Marcus. Every man should watch this and learn what it really means to support your partner. Steph Curry Masterclass. Even Kenneth Jones, the reporter who had asked the question, posted something. Not a complete apology, but an acknowledgement. Watching the live, listening, learning. Sometimes the pursuit of the headline makes you forget there are humans on the other side. It was not enough, but it was a beginning. That night, Steph had a game again, but this time, when he entered the court, something was different. Ayesha was there, sitting in the first row, with the children. And when the camera focused on her, the entire stadium, 16,000 people, stood up and applauded. It was not just applause. It was recognition. It was validation. It was an entire stadium saying, We heard you, we see you, and you matter. Ayesha cried. Steph cried. And if you were watching, you probably cried too. Because it was not about basketball. It was about something much bigger. It was about the moment when two human beings decided they were not going to apologize anymore for being complete, for being complex, for being real. 3 weeks later, Steph and Ayesha were on the same sofa, same room, but this time just between them. No cameras, no audience, just husband and wife. Do you think it was worth it? Ayesha asked. Steph thought for a moment. It was worth everything. There are still people who don't understand. There's still criticism. But you know what changed? We're no longer carrying the weight of silence. We told our truth. And that liberates. I still get messages, Ayesha said, smiling. Women from around the world thanking me, saying that live helped them have their own difficult conversations, to establish their own boundaries. So definitely worth it. They hugged, that long embrace of those who survived a storm and came out stronger on the other side. Some words change everything, but some truths liberate everything. And when you finally stop apologizing for existing, when you finally establish boundaries and defend them, when you finally choose authenticity instead of approval, you discover that the only narrative that really matters is yours. And that true love, the kind that faces storms and comes out the other side still holding hands, does not need external validation to know its own value. The story of Steph and Ayesha Curry did not end that day. But something ended. The era of apologizing for being human. And that, by itself, changed everything.